The origin of international rescue starts in outer space, where 6 astronauts are due to relieve the crew of Freedom, a permanently manned space station. One of them is Colonel Jeff Tracy on a special mission. For the past 3 years, Jeff has been working on experiments surrounding the design and development of launch vehicles that can take mankind out to the stars. With the help of the World Space Administration, Jeff is preparing to set up Tracy Construction and Aerospace Corporations, having been on 18 space missions. Even with such a record, Jeff still yearns to land on the moon. Whilst undertaking successful experiments aboard Freedom, studying solar winds in space, he receives a call from Mission Control. His dream is about to come true. To celebrate the 21st century, a flight to the moon is being organized, and he is to be the mission controller. Completing his duties on Freedom, Jeff heads earthbound to start training for his moon flight and to set up his construction and aeronautics businesses. The mission, with 3 other astronauts, will include a survey of the site chosen for the first lunar outpost. Jeff says goodbye to his family and promises to build his son Scott a new rocket as he heads out for 6 weeks of training. The 6 weeks pass by, and Jeff checks out his rocket design theory and builds Scott his 3rd model rocket. Once complete, his time off is cut short as the setting up of Tracy Construction and Aeronautics call for his time. Moreover, his wife Lucille Tracy tells him that Scott is to have a younger brother or sister. Summer is fast approaching when Jeff is introduced to his fellow moon mission crew. First up, the familiar scientist Allison Richards, who had worked with Jeff aboard Freedom. Pilot Major Larry Hauptmann and engineer Hank Wright, a civilian, completed the crew. Together, they must embark on a training mission aboard a reconnaissance aircraft, the Aurora. It will provide them with a vital environment for high altitude and hypersonic tests. As the aircraft rolled out of the hangar, Jeff couldn't help but marvel at such machinery. Jeff enjoyed the thrill and exhilaration of the flight. This was different to the space missions he had undertaken before. After experiencing a heart-pounding dive, it was once again time to head home for rest. Back home, Lucille announced that Scott was about to have a baby brother. They pondered baby names, and it took Jeff little time to suggest Virgil, named after the astronaut Virgil Grissom, just as Scott had been named after Scott Carpenter. 2 weeks later, Jeff Tracy, Major Hauptmann, Hank Wright, and Allison Richards were blasting off for the moon on another training exercise. Before they could survey the moon, however, they had another objective to fulfill. Jeff had to replace some of the solar batteries on satellite number 5. They moved on to orbit the moon, where Allison Richards and Hank Wright concentrated on their survey work. It was all-important training for the mission to come. The next part of the space readiness activity is a flight into orbit aboard the ASP, the Aerospace Plane. With Jeff and the crew on board, the ASP flies at fantastic speed, cutting through the upper atmosphere at Mach 10. As they near strato-escape, a malfunction occurs, and they begin to lose height. The ASP races back through the clouds. They're going to crash. With the ship out of control, Hauptmann leans across to Jeff's seat and presses the eject button. Jeff's flight seat safely lands in the ocean, and the ASP glides back towards the sky as if nothing had happened, dropping a survival pod. As Jeff struggles to understand why he was deliberately abandoned, he inflates a survival raft and heads for a nearby deserted island. Once on the island, Jeff makes a preliminary exploration and sets up camp. He still can't figure it all out. He continues to make good use of the survival life raft and provisions, and soon discovers a built-in radio transmitter. He is not aware that nearby he is being watched by Mission Control. He makes further explorations of his new home, producing sketches of the island, while sending a regular Mayday call over the radio. 10 weeks pass, and finally a submarine surfaces to pick Jeff up. He did not realize how important this island would one day become to international rescue. Back to the safety on the flight deck of an aircraft carrier, the project controller debriefs Jeff on all that has happened. Everything had been planned. They needed to see how he would react on his own in a hostile environment. He had passed the test and had time to stop off home again, where his new son Virgil had arrived. The first leg of the journey to the moon takes the ASP to the orbiting space station Freedom. The lunar lander awaits Jeff Tracy and his crew. Finally, the 21st century is celebrated with the first moon landing by humans in over 30 years. Major Allison Richards has made history as the first woman to set foot on the lunar surface as they survey a site for a future base. It's a big moment for Jeff, and once over, he returns to Earth with a sense of accomplishment, ready to direct his mind towards the building of his businesses and scientific progress. Over the next 5 years, Jeff and Lucille had 3 more sons, Alan, Gordon, and John, who, along with Scott and Virgil, grew up to develop their own interests and careers. Thanks to the Tracy Aerospace Corporation, superb training facilities to train young astronauts were introduced, designed to develop students' skills and techniques for space travel and awareness. Scott Tracy gained first-hand experience here, returning to Tracy College as an astronaut. Scott was an adventurous sort, and it wasn't long before he joined the U.S. Air Force, where he was decorated many times for his bravery. He finished his formal education at Oxford University, England. Virgil, most like his mother, took a great interest in the heavy-duty equipment used on the Tracy farmstead, and the skills he developed in handling these massive machines were later put to good use when he became the pilot of Thunderbird 2. Virgil had an inner peace and calmness. He became an accomplished pianist and artist. Alan made himself a reputation as a risk-taker, practical joker, and overall daredevil, and so it was no surprise that fast cars became one of his main passions. He took up motor racing, becoming a champion as a driver and designer. Gordon Tracy, named after Gordon Cooper, was the first Tracy to take up a different interest. From a young age, he had a fascination with water. At just 16, he became a gold medalist at the 2020 Olympic Games for the butterfly stroke, and years later he joined the submarine service and then the World Aquanaut Security Patrol. Named after John Glenn, John was next into the family. He studied electronics at Harvard University and gained a degree in laser communications. He later trained to be an astronaut at Tracy College in Kansas, meaning he had both the interest and ability to travel to the stars. Jeff had 5 sons to be proud of, and he considered himself a very lucky man. However, that luck was to extend when he met a young student, affectionately referred to by his classmates as Brains. Jeff presented him with the coveted Tracy College Supreme Student's Diploma for outstanding abilities in advanced mathematics. Over the next few years, Brains would stay in the forefront of Jeff Tracy's mind as he toyed with the idea of setting up a rescue organization. Life was good for the Tracy family. The 5 Tracy boys were progressing their careers, and they were all eager to enjoy a vacation together in Aspen, near the ski slopes where Jeff's mother and father had bought a holiday home. Jeff was on his way in his new twin-seater executive jet when a weather warning for heavy snowfall came in. Jeff was advised to fly to Denver and wait for the weather to improve. The reports changed from concern to panic, and soon Jeff ignored the safety warnings, choosing to take off and head out there himself. There he found disaster. Thousands of tons of snow had slipped from the mountains and buried the house and its neighbors for miles around. Lucille and Jeff's father were inside at the time. When Jeff arrived, he found the boys and their grandma desperately digging through the snow to try to save them. It was too late. Jeff had lost his wife and his father, and he felt utterly devastated. Suddenly his success and wealth meant nothing to him. Back on the Tracy ranch, a sadness fell over the family. The Tracy sons worried about their father, as Jeff ignored the doctor's help and thought about the island he had once been marooned on. It seemed to him to be the perfect, peaceful escape. Without telling anyone, Jeff was soon on his way in his twin-seater jet. The boys could only look on in wonder. Jeff arrived at the island, but he overshot just as the fuel was running out. It was too late to make a safe landing. He headed for a crash landing on a nearby jungle island. Back home, the Tracy boys were worried about him. Checking the flight log, they attempted to get a trace on him, but by the time they had, they knew it could be too late. Jeff, now unconscious, is automatically ejected from the jet just in time, but heading straight for the dangerous jungle. Not far away, an island native spots the crashed plane. He wonders if anyone could have survived. Jeff's leg is broken. He stumbles through the jungle in agony. The island native finds Jeff, and realizing he will need careful nursing, carries him back to his home. Deep in a faraway jungle, a strange power is generated from a forgotten building. Steadily being reclaimed by jungle growth, the ancient temple appears deserted. Inside, a mysterious figure, who will come to be known as the Hood, speaks out to his half-brother Kirano, the island native. He asks him who the stranger is that Kirano is nursing. Kirano feels a headache as he hears his brother. He takes Jeff back to his village, where his daughter Tintin helps to care for him. The Hood tells Kirano not to worry and sets off to meet them. On arrival, he provides Jeff with an ancient herbal balm to soothe his injuries. But as he leaves, Jeff is left with a strange and haunting image. Back at Tracy Corporation HQ, Scott and Virgil are using all available equipment to search for their father. Meanwhile, Jeff continues to grieve for the loss of his wife and father, explaining the disaster to Kirano. During a conversation with Kirano's daughter Tintin, a disaster strikes. An explosion erupts from a nearby ferry, devastating the ship and many of the people aboard. Jeff, Tintin, and Kirano desperately move out to aid the survivors, but it's too late. The ship sinks. Hundreds of innocent lives lost. Jeff thinks back to the disaster avalanche where his wife and father were killed. He realizes now is the time to launch an organization to tackle these kind of emergencies. He speaks with Kirano, determined to get in touch with his sons, and sets about fixing the radio on his crashed plane. Back at home, Scott and Virgil are waiting to hear on search results, to no avail. As they are about to take up the search themselves, they receive a weak radio signal. It's Jeff. He asks all 5 of them to come to Singapore. International rescue is about to begin. Jeff Tracy has crash-landed on a remote island after overshooting his original destination. He has been nursed back to life by the faithful Carano and his daughter Tintin, and after witnessing another disaster at sea, his 5 sons, Scott, Virgil, Alan, Gordon and John, are flying out to Singapore to retrieve him. He says his goodbyes to Tintin and Carano and thanks them for their help. On the way home, he explains the idea of international rescue to his sons, who are all keen to be involved. After some rest, Jeff is determined to get to work. He first needs to secure a base, and as he sifts through plans and blueprints, he has an idea. The island he crash-landed on during his moon training missions would be the perfect place. In no time at all, Jeff, Scott and Alan are flying out to the South Pacific to start surveying the island. Jeff finds a cabin and starts to imagine how it might be turned into a hangar for a large freighter. Alan has a nasty fall, but Scott comes to his aid and he comes out relatively unscathed. They survey the rest of the island, and both Scott and Alan agree that this would make an ideal base. They fly home, and Jeff organizes meetings in all corners of the world. In each city, specialists are recruited to the cause of international rescue. In New York, construction and legal. In Sydney, architecture and electrical engineering. In Toronto, communications and electrical. In Paris, civil engineering and interior design. But the most vital member of the international rescue team was still to be traced. And Jeff remembered the gifted young student Brains, who had graduated Tracy College not long ago. He traced Brains to London, where he was giving a lecture. Jeff listened with fascination, and afterwards approached him to join the international rescue team. After some discussion, Brains finally agreed, and a week later he and Jeff were at the Tracy Aerospace plants. The time goes swiftly, and with components supplied by hundreds of unconnected manufacturers, construction on rescue aircraft moves along at pace. Then, at last, first of the new machines is ready. It rolls out of the hangar, with Scott Tracy at the controls. He takes off, igniting the high-performance sustainer rocket, pushing the craft forward at speed. Just as Scott begins to enjoy the test flight, Jeff warns him of a heavy storm rolling in and tells him to return to base. As the machine heads back for base, it's suddenly hit by lightning. Scott spirals out of control, crashing towards the ground. Back at the Tracy Aerospace airfield, Alan and Jeff ask Brains if Scott could eject, but Brains has a ground-to-air control system to try out. He successfully takes over control of the machine, but it's too late. Although he manages to get the nose up, the machine still crashes to the ground. The crash tenders arrive, and Jeff is sad to see the first test flight end in disaster. But Brains seems to disagree. The new alloy metal has stood up well to the lightning, and Scott is hauled from the cockpit with no injuries. At the debriefing, Scott jokes that after being hit by lightning, the rocket became a real Thunderbird. It strikes Jeff that these should be the names of the rescue craft going forward. 3 weeks later, a modified, finalized version of Thunderbird 1 is ready for takeoff, and it blasts off for the sky. Meanwhile, excavation work starts on Tracy Island to house the large, heavy transport craft to be known as Thunderbird 2. The Tracy Villa at the top of the island is also under construction, and Brains tells Jeff and Virgil that Thunderbird 2 is ready for a test flight. In no time at all, Virgil is at the controls, piloting her successfully through the skies. At the Tracy Corporation Flight Test Center, a finalized Thunderbirds 1 and 2 are ready, whilst Thunderbird 3 nears completion in a nearby hangar. The time has come to ferry the new aircraft to their new home in the South Pacific. now officially referred to by Jeff and the boys as Tracy Island. When they arrive, Jeff gives Scott and Virgil a tour of the island. Speed of launch will be vital. Both Scott and Virgil will have direct access to their machines from the lounge. They head to Thunderbird 2's hangar, where Thunderbird 4, a submarine, is having finishing touches applied. As Virgil gets to grip with the pod system, Gordon takes Thunderbird 4 for a spin off the jetty. The action moves offshore as they test Thunderbird 2's ability to pick up a pod off the water. Suddenly, there's a fault in the buoyancy system, and Thunderbird 4 starts sinking. Thunderbird 2 races to the spot where she went down, but the pod latches fail. Pod 4 falls out of Thunderbird 2 and crashes down onto the island, grazing the side of the Tracy villa as it goes. Meanwhile, Gordon leaves Thunderbird 4 on the seabed and swims to the surface. Scott and Alan meet him in scuba suits, and they head underwater to fix Thunderbird 4. It doesn't take long before Thunderbird 4 floats back to the surface. Despite the setbacks, Jeff tells his sons that they've been given permission to build a space station. Thunderbird 5 is go. With Thunderbird 3 finished, they are able to take it on its maiden flight to assist in the construction of Thunderbird 5. Jeff, Alan, and John Tracy take up launch positions, and liftoff is successful. A series of exhaustive flight checks are carried out as she continues out of the stratosphere. The skeleton of Thunderbird 5 is soon in view. The scores of expert space engineers and technicians employed to construct the satellite are unaware of the eventual purpose of the new space station. To them, it is just another interesting project. Under the supervision of Jeff, Scott, Alan, and John, Thunderbird 5 is soon complete, and international rescue is finally operational. But there is still one missing piece of the jigsaw. As Jeff and Brains fly to London to view the unveiling of the new Fireflash airliner that Tracy Aerospace helped to build, he finds time to visit a stately home not far from the airport. Lady Penelope Crichton Ward is an old acquaintance of Jeff, and she welcomes him. Penny has not realized that her latest undercover investigation has been a test set up by Jeff. She is to be lead amongst the international rescue agents across the globe. Continuing on around the world, Jeff stops off at Singapore, where he had his crash landing now some months ago. Meeting up with Carano, who nursed him back to health after his crash, Jeff invites him and his daughter Tintin to stay on Tracy Island. He is delighted to accept the offer, and as a university graduation treat, Tintin has a place on board the first commercial flight of the new Fireflash airliner. With the international rescue list of very important people nearly complete, Jeff returns to Tracy Island, where one final arrival greets him. He is pleased to welcome his mother to the team, fondly referred to as Grandma by the boys. Back in London, Tintin is about to fly on board the maiden flight of the new Fireflash aircraft. She is on her way to Tokyo, and will after be travelling to Tracy Island. It will not be long before International Rescue carry out their first mission, for in order to obtain the secrets of International Rescue, the Hood has planted a bomb on the Fireflash, which will force the Thunderbirds out into the open. But will the Hood get his wicked way? Or will International Rescue save the day?